The bully slapped a 12-year-old black boy in a diner, not knowing that his father was a mafia boss. The slap echoed through the diner like a gunshot. Miguel's face, only 12 years old, turned to the side with the force of the blow as his school backpack fell to the dirty tile floor. Coins rolled in all directions. "Learn to walk straight, kid," shouted Derek Thompson, 16, who stood 6 feet tall. His fists were still clenched, the gold football team ring leaving a red mark on the child's cheek. Fat Tony's Burger was the kind of place where students stopped after school, cheap, noisy, and with little supervision from the staff. Derek had ruled that territory for 2 years, charging protection money from the younger kids and always finding reasons to humiliate those he considered inferior. Miguel slowly got up, touching his bruised face. His dark eyes showed no fear, something that should have alerted Derek, but the bully was too busy showing off to his friends who were laughing at the nearby tables. "Sorry," Miguel muttered, starting to gather his scattered coins. It was the snack money his grandmother had given him that morning, carefully counted to last the whole week. "Sorry doesn't pay for my sneakers you stepped on." Derek kicked the coins away. "You know how much these cost? More than your whole house, I bet." The other teenagers laughed louder. Phones came out of pockets, nothing like humiliating someone and still getting likes on Instagram. What none of them noticed was Miguel discreetly turning on the recorder on his cell phone and sliding the device under a nearby table. The employee behind the counter, a middle-aged woman named Dolores, hesitated for a moment. Derek was the son of an important local businessman. Miguel was just another poor kid from the neighborhood. She lowered her eyes and pretended not to see. "My dad always says that people like you need to learn to respect people like us," Derek continued, pushing Miguel against the wall. "Maybe a harsher lesson will teach you some manners." That's when Miguel did something unexpected. Instead of crying or begging, he looked Derek straight in the eye and said with disturbing calm, "My dad also teaches me about respect. And about consequences." Derek laughed. "Your father? What father? I bet you don't even have one, like most." The sentence died in the air when Miguel finished, "Vincenzo Torino. Maybe you know the name." The silence that followed was deafening. Even Derek, with all his teenage arrogance, had grown up hearing whispers about the Torino family. Stories told in hushed tones in the city's bars. Businesses that ran without interference. Problems that simply disappeared. But Derek was too far gone to back down now, especially with everyone filming. "Liar," he growled, but his voice betrayed a note of uncertainty. Miguel just smiled. A smile that didn't reach his eyes and made him look years older than his 12 years. "Dad always says that family is sacred. And that whoever messes with family, well, you'll find out." As Derek processed those words, Miguel calmly picked up his cell phone, checked that the recording was perfect, and put the device away. His movements were precise, calculated, far too mature for a child who had just been assaulted. The cafeteria remained deathly silent. Derek looked around, realizing for the first time that he might have just made the biggest mistake of his privileged teenage life. If you're enjoying this story of how an arrogant bully is about to discover that he completely underestimated his victim, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what comes next will show that some lessons in respect cost much more than a simple apology. Derek Thompson wasn't just your average bully. He was the product of a family that had learned to use power and influence to get what they wanted. In the 3 days following the incident at Fat Tony's, he set about turning Miguel's school life into a calculated hell. "Hey, Torino!" Derek shouted down the hallway of Lincoln High School, deliberately pronouncing the surname with contempt. "Your mafia daddy ain't gonna protect you in here." Miguel continued walking calmly toward his math class, ignoring the laughter of Derek's friends. His backpack had mysteriously disappeared from his locker for the 3rd time that week, and someone had stuck an offensive note in his desk. What Derek didn't realize was that Miguel photographed every incident, wrote down every date, cataloged every witness. At 12, he had already learned from his father that documentation was power, and power well used was justice. "Thompson is testing boundaries," Miguel muttered on the phone during lunch, sitting alone on the patio. "Dad always says that small fish make a lot of noise before they get caught." On the other end of the line, Vincenzo Torino's deep, calm voice replied, "Son, sometimes you have to let people like that hang themselves with their own rope. Keep watching. Keep learning." On Thursday afternoon, Derek decided to escalate things even further. During gym class, he orchestrated an accident where Miguel was elbowed in the stomach during a basketball game. The teacher, Coach Williams, who knew very well who Derek's father was in the community, pretended not to see. "Watch your step, Torino," Derek whispered as Miguel recovered on the floor. "Accidents happen when you don't know your place." But it was on Friday that Derek made his fatal mistake. During recess, he and 4 friends surrounded Miguel near the bathrooms, away from the security cameras. It was the perfect place for humiliation without official witnesses. "You know what, Torino?" Derek pushed Miguel against the wall. "I'm tired of your mafia stories. My dad knows everyone important in this town. If your family was really dangerous, I would have heard about it." Miguel looked Derek straight in the eye, with the same unsettling calm as always. "Maybe you don't know the right people to hear the right stories." "Liar." Derek clenched his fist. "I bet your father doesn't even exist. Just like most." "Be careful what you say next," Miguel interrupted, his voice low but laden with an authority that shouldn't exist in a 12-year-old. Derek hesitated for a microsecond, then regained his bravado. "Or what? Are you going to call your imaginary daddy?" Then Miguel did something completely unexpected. Instead of backing down or protesting, he smiled and pulled out his cell phone. "Actually, good idea." "Miguel." The voice that answered was instantly recognizable, deep, controlled, with a subtle Italian accent that the whole town knew from local news reports about successful businessman Vincenzo Torino. "Hi, Dad. I'm here with Derek Thompson. You remember I told you about him." Derek and his friends recoiled involuntarily. That voice on the phone, they knew it. Everyone in town knew it. Oh yes. The Thompson boy. The voice paused. "Son of the real estate developer, right? Interesting family. Give him the phone." Miguel handed the phone to Derek, who was visibly pale. "He wants to talk to you." Derek took the phone with trembling hands. Hello. Derek Thompson." The voice wasn't threatening, it was worse. It was polite, calm, almost friendly. "I hear you and my son have had some misunderstandings." "Sir, we were just..." "Let me explain something about family, kid. In my culture, family is sacred. When someone messes with my family, it becomes my personal problem." Derek swallowed hard. In the background, his friends began to discreetly move away. "Now, I'm sure this was just a misunderstanding between young people. But I want you to understand one thing very clearly. My son Miguel is polite, respectful, intelligent. He doesn't look for trouble. But I solve problems. It's been my specialty for many years." "Why yes, sir. I understand." "Good. Give the phone back to Miguel." Derek handed the phone back as if it were burning. Miguel spoke briefly with his father in Italian, then hung up. "He enjoyed talking to you," Miguel said politely. "Dad always says it's important to get to know the families of my schoolmates." That night, Derek Thompson found it impossible to sleep. Every shadow in the window, every noise in the street made his heart race. He had grown up hearing whispers about the Torino family, businesses that never failed, competitors who simply disappeared from the market, authorities who never asked questions. And he had assaulted, humiliated, and threatened the son of the man everyone respected, or feared, too much to mention aloud. Miguel, on the other hand, slept peacefully. As he always did when he knew the pieces were moving exactly where they should be. On Saturday morning, Derek's father received an unexpected call. "Thompson? Vincenzo Torino here. I hear our sons met at school. How about we talk about this in person? I have some ideas about how our boys can get along better." The meeting was scheduled for Monday. Derek spent the entire weekend wondering what that conversation could mean for his family. Each new humiliation Derek had imposed only strengthened something inside Miguel that the bully couldn't see, a silent strength fueled by the very injustice they were trying to impose. What that privileged teenager didn't know was that each act of contempt was writing his own sentence, and that on Monday he would discover that messing with the wrong family has consequences that go far beyond the school walls. Monday arrived like a sentence. Derek Thompson had spent the entire weekend imagining increasingly terrifying scenarios about what that meeting with Vincenzo Torino could mean for his family. At 8:30 a.m., he arrived at school with deep dark circles under his eyes, constantly looking over his shoulder. Every dark car that drove down the street made his heart race. Miguel, on the other hand, entered the courtyard of Lincoln High School with his usual calm, politely greeting the teachers and organizing his books in his locker with military precision. Thompson. Principal Peterson's voice echoed down the hallway. My office. Now. Derek felt his legs buckle. Was it about the meeting? About the assaults? About something worse? In the office, Peterson closed the door with a serious expression. Your father called me. He said you and Miguel Torino had some disagreements. Would you like to explain what happened? Derek swallowed hard. How could he explain that he had threatened and assaulted the son of one of the most feared men in town? It was just a silly argument, sir. An argument that resulted in you hitting him? Peterson opened a folder. Because we have witnesses, Derek. And videos. It was then that Derek realized the extent of the problem. Miguel hadn't just recorded the phone conversation with his father, he had documented everything. Every push, every insult, every humiliation of the last few days was recorded and organized like a professional dossier. Look, Derek, Peterson sighed, you're a good student, but this, he showed screenshots of messages Derek had sent to friends mocking Miguel. This is systematic bullying. And against a minor. The messages had been captured and printed with the date and time. Miguel had created a complete file of Derek's actions, including statements from other students who had witnessed the attacks. How did he get these messages? Derek whispered, horrified. Apparently, some of your friends decided to cooperate when they found out who Miguel's father was. Peterson closed the folder. 3-day suspension. And you will apologize publicly. As Derek left the office, completely devastated, Miguel was in the library quietly working on a science project. But it wasn't a typical school project, it was a detailed presentation on how technology can be used to document injustice. That's when Miss Rodriguez, the librarian, approached him. Miguel, your Uncle Vincent is here to see you. Vincent Torino looked nothing like what Derek would expect from someone in the family. Tall, elegant, wearing a discreet suit and carrying a leather briefcase, he looked more like a successful lawyer than any mafia stereotype. Ciao, Nipote. Vincent kissed Miguel's head affectionately. Dad told me about your problem at school. It's not a problem anymore, Zio Vincent, Miguel replied in fluent Italian. It's being resolved. Vincent smiled proudly. Your father wants you to learn that there are many ways to resolve conflicts. Some are more educational than others. In the teacher's lounge, news of Vincent Torino's visit spread like wildfire. Everyone knew who the Torino family was, even if they never spoke about it openly. Some whispered about generous contributions to school projects. Others mentioned how discipline problems involving certain families simply disappeared. Coach Williams, who had purposely ignored the aggression during physical education, suddenly remembered witnessing possible irregularities in the games. Dolores, from Fat Tony's, called the school offering to be a witness to the original incident. At 3:30 p.m., Richard Thompson arrived at the school driving his BMW, his face tense and his hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel. Vincenzo Torino was already waiting in the parking lot, leaning against an immaculate black Cadillac, calmly reading an Italian newspaper. Mr. Thompson, Vincenzo greeted him politely, folding the newspaper with military precision. Thank you for coming. Richard tried to maintain the businesslike composure that had always worked in his real estate negotiations. Mr. Torino, I'm sure we can resolve this like civilized men. Of course, Vincenzo smiled. Let's talk in my office. It's more private. For the next 20 minutes, students and school staff noticed Richard Thompson getting out of the Cadillac with a deathly pallor and visibly trembling hands. He walked straight to where Derek was waiting, his eyes avoiding eye contact with anyone. We're moving, Richard whispered to his son. At the end of the month. Dad, what happened? What did he say to you? Richard looked around paranoid, then pulled Derek into a secluded corner. He showed me photos, son. Photos of all our properties, our house, your class schedules. He knew where your mother shops, where I have lunch, even the name of our dog's veterinarian. Derek felt his blood run cold. But he didn't make any threats, did he, Dad? He didn't need to. Richard ran his hand nervously through his hair. He just said that family is important to him, and that he hoped I would teach you the value of respecting other families. While father and son talked desperately, Miguel calmly organized